Hello, welcome to week 4 with our SIA 598 Augmented Reality class. We titled this one Success is the Front Door. Reginald Bennett.
Josh Costera.
Today's the 27th of June, the summer of 2014. We're here at the University of Maine, Orono. And we'll tell you a little bit about what we've achieved this week.
So this week we worked some more on the development side with actual coding in Visual Studio, and with the correct libraries included and the correct placement, we actually were able to compile a demo and run it on the glasses. It was just displayed some wireframe spheres and tracked pitch and yaw and roll. So that was a good major step for us. Now we can at least have a demo to play with. Also this week I've been in contact with the Vuzix tech support, and they just released a new SDK, which is version 3.6 that I just downloaded. And I'm going to see if there's a new demos with that and if it fixed any of the other problems we were having.
All right, so one of the things with the videos we want to do is explain to you how we got to where we are each way. So for someone who just picks up these glasses, walk them through the steps in order to make it work successfully.
So if you're compiling in Visual Studio, you have to in the SDK they give you a list of the additional libraries. There's OpenCV, DirectX 9 SDK, a Windows Server R2 SDK, which I'm not quite sure why you need that one, but they say so. And then for one of the demos, you also need to install OpenGL. And then once you have those installed, when you open the project, you'll have to point Visual Studio. You can go, there's a properties under the project properties, and you can tell it what directories to include for header files and library files and stuff like that. And you have to point it to all the right directories, and then they should compile. OpenGL was a little trickier to install. Depending on what platform you're using, there's instructions online that you can follow that are pretty good for installing it.
And what version of Visual Studio did we end up with?
Right now we're using 2012. I may be switching to 2008 because some of the other files some of the other projects require version 2008 apparently. So I may just run both and see if I can get it working in both.
And you're 32-bit versus 64-bit?
I am running 64-bit currently.
Okay, so
I think they'll be the same. Your directories might be different, but I believe once you point it to the right directories, it should still work regardless of what bit it is, but your program files directory will be the biggest change. You'll want to look in the right one.
So that took us a little while to get the software development environment set up to where they would compile. So we got that this week, so the oncoming weeks we should be able to start showing a little more progress with things we're doing now that we actually have a working environment. Next thing is MaxReality. We're also having a lot of issues with that one, but this week we got that working, actually just this morning. And so we worked with one. We told you that the MaxReality only supports up to 2012. So the plugin will support 2010 through 2012. But if you go onto AutoDesk right now, again, today is June 27th, 2014. AutoDesk will provide a student version of the furthest year back is 2012. So we can't try 10 or 11. But just be aware of that in future years that you're going to have to go back at least to 2012 to make this happen. So when we tried to get this to all register, we put 2012 in, and we were finally getting the success in that. When we started 3DS after installing MaxReality, we were getting a prompt to register it, and what it wanted you to do is put in a product key, and then it was on a yellow card that comes with your glasses, and then once you put the product key in, you hit email. It tells you what to email as far as where, the subject, and the content, and then you should get a response back saying, hey, here's your activation key, or your key has been exceeded. So the first key we put in, because the lab that we work with has multiple sets of these glasses, the first key we put in, sent the email, took about 2 hours to get a response back from the automated system, and it came back and said, okay, here's your activation key, and immediately after that, and talking about essentially we got it at the same time, we got another email that said your key has been exceeded, as in it's been used before. Check the license says it can only be used for one installation on one computer. So we're like, okay, well, since the lab's had these for a few years, maybe this got used a while back. So we rummaged around, found some other keys. The second key we tried to activate, and we got an immediate, no 2 hour wait, immediate come back saying, hey, it's been exceeded, no. And so then we said, okay, well, let's try the third one. And so we put the third one in. We never received a response back for 2 days. Tried again this morning, didn't get a response back. So anyway, so what do we do with the activation key the first time? Well, we plugged it into that register. So again, if you go into the plugins folder where MaxReality puts the stuff in, it's going to install 4 files, 2 executables and 1 DLL. I can't remember what the other one is.
It's DLU. It's the actual.
DLU.
It's
Sorry.
the actual license file, I believe, or
Okay.
something along
So
those lines.
right. So that's what goes in there. So when you go to register, with the activation key that they sent us, and also bear in mind the registration window that pops up also has at the bottom, it says continue if you want to use a 30-day trial or 100 activations, whichever one comes sooner. So, you know, the last time we met, which was a few days ago, we tried to just do the trial, and what we kept getting was an error saying, can't do this because DLU cannot be accessed. Try running this without 3ds Max running. Well, the problem is those two applications I talked about earlier that are in the plugins folder, they don't execute anything on their own. So you can't pull up that registration window outside of 3ds. So the only way to pull up the registration window is to start 3ds, and then it searches this plugins folders, it finds this, and then it brings up the register window. And so we tried all different types of things trying to get this to work, this, that, and the other. Wrote tech support. Tech support came back and told us, start 3ds, get the register window up, and before you actually click on anything, you know, if you want to do the trial, then go into the task manager and kill the process for 3ds Max, which seems a little
backwards.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, but you know what? So we tried it, and but instead of trying the trial, I said, hey, let's throw that first activation code. Even we got kind of mixed emails. Let's try that, and it actually worked. So the activation code went in, you registered it. So we've now been able to access 3ds Max with the MaxReality plugin with no issues, and so that's great. So the key takeaway there is, one, make sure you have 2012, 2011, 2010. When you start the registration, put in your product key, get your response back with your activation key, and then whenever you get that back, when you're on that registration window, you got to go into Task Manager and kill the process, not the program. The second tab over in Task Manager, and actually kill the process for 3ds, and then it'll register just fine. And as soon as it registers, it will actually pull 3ds back open. So, and then, like I said, we launched it 3 or 4 times after that, and there's no problems. Show you some screenshots here in a second. We were able to create our own AR demo. We just got this working this morning, so it's nothing amazing, but it's exciting at least that
we're making progress on both fronts, so it's kind of nice.
Right, and then in earlier videos we showed you some of the demos that came with MaxReality, and they had their own icon, and those were VWD file types. And so now with the MaxReality installed, we're actually able to create our own export to that. So inside MaxReality, you can either launch directly from there to do a test, or you can export the VWD, and then when you click on the MaxReality icon on your desktop, it will bring up those types of files that will launch, and then we can now actually launch our own demo straight from there. So that means that once we put all the work in, we will be able to, if we're going to demo this, we don't have to open up 3ds.
We can actually release just the VWD file, and anyone with MaxReality can watch it or use the demo.
Exactly, and right, which is great, because then too, those people don't have to battle through trying to get 3ds to work. If it's just a demo machine, they just want to see what's being done.
Yeah.
Something else that we'll talk a little bit more as we do the development cycle in the oncoming weeks is that we had some issues initially with the size of the renders that we were creating inside 3ds. Turns out the camera seems to be in an absolute location regardless of how far you actually create it inside the 3D space in 3ds, because we kept making it further and further and further from our large object, but no matter what, our object was like taking up the whole screen every time. So finally we just took everything, scaled it way down, and then it fit, and you'll see in the pictures.
So we have 3 pictures here. They're overlaid each other. The first upper left is actually just an Explorer shot of the 3DX Max file, then the VWD file that we had talked about, 2 versions that we attempted to create. Behind that, you can actually see the demo working. It's just a picture for now. We didn't get able to capture an actual video of it, but we're holding the marker up, and you can see the custom not really an animation, but the custom display that we have for that marker includes our little group logo. And then on the last image is actually 3ds Max, and you can see the plugin where it says Vuzix, and you can either launch or export VWD files.
And so keep in mind here, that middle image there, in order to kind of sync what you're seeing, you can see in the bottom right of the monitor, you can see where the tag is there. So that's, you can kind of see how that should appear in the top right. Shows you the green of the screen, both spots. What's interesting is that the picture of 3ds Max here is actually the same export file as what you're seeing on the screen. So you'll notice that on 3ds Max you have textures on the sphere and the larger block, and no texture for our banner. However, when it was rendered, it rendered the texture for our banner, which, Banner Car Story Group down there, and then it just gave the solid diffuse colors that I applied. So that's something to look into, but again, we just got this started, so hopefully we'll figure out those nuances so we can make these things look as good as possible.
This week we contacted someone, his name's Hassan. I won't give his last name for reasons. But we found him on YouTube. He had actually done work with the Kinect and the AR920 glasses. So I contacted him through YouTube, and he set up a Skype call with him on Wednesday. So we sat down and talked with him and went over what he had done and what resources he had used. And he gave us some directions for an alternative starting point for our code. Instead of using the SDK, he used basically just a file out of the SDK and then some other libraries to get his little demo working. So it's another path we can start down and see what results come of it.
Last week we talked about if we couldn't get MaxReality to work, we are going to try this ARmedia plugin. So I was trying that before we got the whole crazy use task manager to cancel. We're trying to get ARmedia to work, and guess what? Just like MaxReality, that thing doesn't work right out of the box either. So we tried installing that, and the instructions that said, like the quick start guide on how to install it, they went through correctly, but when you open 3ds Max, you don't have the icons or access to the plugin as the start guide suggests, and the program actually doesn't get installed to the start menu either, which the quick start guide seems to imply it should. So we were able to get to the configuration screens by just navigating to it through the actual C drive, but obviously it seemed like it didn't install the right way, and it definitely didn't work from the first installation. So we're going to try and figure out the nuances to get that working, but with MaxReality working and that being the actual proprietary software of 920, we might explore that later on in the class, but right now we're going to go ahead and work with the two development environments that we have set up right now, which is 3ds and Visual Studio.
So one of the things that Hassan pointed us towards was Direct Show Network, which is an API that's built into the DirectX SDK. It's kind of deprecated. The last update was around 2010. So it's kind of older technology, but he used it in order to actually capture video from the webcams on the glasses, and then it can also do playback for the monitors and the glasses. And so I need to look into this. I just kind of read a little bit of documentation, but it could be an alternative to the actual Vuzix SDK. We could use this for capturing and playback, and then doing any kind of modification of the images. We would probably have to do our own marker recognition with this software, would be my guess. So it would be a little more difficult than the Vuzix SDK.
So again, to kind of wrap up this week, we finally have like a solid start on actually making some functional products now. So we got the MaxReality to work, and we have our coding environment to compile. So in the coming weeks, we should be able to start actually working on our own custom products and things we want to do. So yeah, that's what we did this week.